I think the world is much, much bigger. And I think the potential for direct selling is much, much greater than it ever has been. But we also have to compete on a whole new level compared to what we have done. And I think that's the biggest risk for companies right now, is not recognizing how competitive we have to be.
Hey there, and welcome back to the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I'm your host, Sam Hind, and I'm here to help you grow an incredible business that serves your needs and, most importantly, that you are super passionate about. This industry does that in spades every single day, and it is why Greg and I dedicate our time and our team dedicates their resources to serving you by delivering many, many resources to help you, this podcast being one of them. We are so excited to be able to bring to you people who can provide you wisdom and, most importantly, knowledge that means you don't need to continuously reinvent the wheel. If you want to learn how to grow a successful business in this space and you want to learn from those who have gone before you, those who have done incredible things in this industry, then you've come to the right place. I feel absolutely honored and privileged that I get to bring incredible people from all over the globe right into your living room. And today is absolutely no exception. Today I am privileged and honored to be introducing you to somebody who I had the chance to meet a few years ago when we spoke at one of their conferences here in Australia. He had come over from the US and we hit it off straight away, and I knew at that point I really wanted to get him onto this podcast to chat with all of you. And boy, did we have an awesome conversation. Today, I get to introduce you to Dave Fleming. Dave is the Executive Vice President of Business Development at Neora. Now, if you are unfamiliar with Neora, you'll learn a little bit more about it in this podcast interview, but it is one direct selling company that has had a lot of publicity over the last few years in both positive and negative ways. And Dave will speak a little bit more into that during this episode. But what we really wanted to do is we wanted to have some really serious conversations about the direction this industry is going in right now. And the beauty of me running this podcast is we can talk about whatever we want, and that's exactly what we did. And look, to be perfectly honest, there's a lot of questions I think people are asking right now about this industry. Where is it going? What direction can we see it heading in? And what can we expect as we grow businesses? Can I still trust having a business in this industry? And how do I lead a team? And how do I grow something that's going to serve my needs, as you know, we're seeing lots of changes, etc., happening as we move forward. And so Dave and I had a really honest chat about this. He was super open, and I really want to honor him for opening up and sharing his experience in this industry, of which spans over 20 years in the direct selling industry. So he certainly brings a huge amount of knowledge, wisdom, and most certainly inspiration, I would say, to this conversation. So from somebody who I highly respect, who has done a lot in this industry, to you, who I really want to honor as well for showing up today, I am so glad that we could bring you this episode to talk a little bit about what is happening in the industry right now and how you can successfully grow a business in this space and have the confidence that you are exactly where you need to be. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand over to the interview with the amazing Dave Fleming. It's my honor and privilege to share with you this conversation today. So welcome back to the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I am so excited to welcome you on in, Dave. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. It's great to see you. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
You too. And I love the fact that I get to, you're in Texas right now, so we get to do this from literally across the globe at different ends of the day. But you and I got the chance to meet in person, of course, at one of the Neora events in, I want to say it was Sydney, a couple of years ago.
Sydney at the Pier 1 Hotel. Beautiful, beautiful location. And of course, you knocked it out of the park. So that was you were a great addition to our event there. Thank you for doing that for us.
Had a lot of fun with that. And it just occurred to me, actually, I was pregnant at the time. I've now got an almost 1-year-old. So it was a little while ago.
It was. I know. Time has gone by quickly. But
It has. Funny story, actually. When I spoke at that event, I hadn't really told anyone yet that I was pregnant. I was kind of keeping a little bit under wraps. Not that I was hiding it, couldn't, because I was quite obviously pregnant. But I remember getting a phone call from the DSA the following week going, is there something you haven't told us? Because they'd seen all the pictures go up online. And apparently it was I was wearing my standard clothes just with a big belly going on, and they thought either she had a really big breakfast or there's something happening there. So you guys were kind of the coming out event, apparently.
We must have been. I think we were just learning about the pregnancy at that event, which was great. It was nice of you to come share that with us. That felt very, very personal. So thank you for letting us be part of that.
Well, enough about me. Let's chat a little bit about you. Can you share maybe a fun fact or something about you, Dave? I'd love for our audience to get to know you, because we're going to have a really great conversation today, of course, about what's going on in the industry, Neora, many of those wonderful things.
Yeah. Fun fact I'll give you a couple of fun facts about me, because there are things that people wouldn't necessarily expect. Looking at me and seeing this face, no one would suspect that I was fluent in Mandarin Chinese, but I've spent,
oh my goodness.
Yeah, I've lived overseas, lived in Taiwan and Beijing for about 5 years total over the course of my career in different capacities. And so, yes, I do speak Chinese. It really throws people for a loop when I speak Chinese, because they just don't expect it. The other thing,
do you have some fun with this? Like, do you go to environments like Chinese restaurants? I always wonder, if you were fluent in a language, would you go into an environment where people wouldn't expect it and just listen on in and shock the heck out of people when you actually repeat back or answer a question?
So I try not to eavesdrop and intrude on other people's conversations, but I will say it is funny when people are talking about me and they don't recognize that I can understand what they're saying. That's always fun. But
I feel like I would absolutely eavesdrop and have some fun with that.
I mean, sometimes it's hard not to. But one of my favorite experiences was actually in Melbourne. They have a wonderful Chinatown full of these great Chinese restaurants. And so I went in and I sat down with a bunch of my friends and colleagues who looked just like me. And I asked the server in Chinese, I said, hey, what do you recommend? And so it was great, because she grabbed all the menus. She said, don't worry. She's like, I've got you. Like, don't worry. Like, we're going to make something really special for you and your team here, which was exactly what I was hoping for. And it turned out great, as it always does.
I love that. So you had a second one for us.
The second one, and this is why I tell people this is why I ended up in direct selling. I actually have 2 degrees. I earned an MBA in my postgraduate work, but my undergraduate degree is in psychology. And so I tell people that this is the only industry where you can do therapy and business in the same meeting. And so that's kind of why I've gravitated. Part of the reason why I've gravitated to this, because I just on so many levels connects with me and my background and what I've done.
Yeah, wow. I love that. It's so true. And it is one of the really beautiful things about this industry. And people often say, why direct selling? Why do you specialize in this space? I'm like, because it's not just about the business, it's about the people, and it's about growing people. And I love it so much. So yeah, that's awesome. You have, however, partly answered my second question, which was, what drew you to the direct selling space, Dave?
Well, and when I first got started in direct selling, I did not know the first thing about direct selling, but I was working for a company that needed Chinese speaking order processors. I happen to speak Chinese. And so that's where I started. That's where I began my career. And I was on the phones talking to people and learning about this business. And as I got to learn more about it, it just became fascinating and really inspiring to me at the same time, because this is a business that doesn't matter where you came from, what your background is, what your education is, what your financial resources look like. Like, if you're willing to do the work and learn how to do this business the right way, you can thrive in this space. It's kind of like entrepreneurship with very low barriers to entry. And I thought that is super cool, that people can from wherever, or any walk of life, can come in and literally change their life and the life of their teammates, their team members, for the better by participating in something like this. And so I learned about it. I kind of fell in love with it. And then here we are more than 20 years later, still involved and still loving it.
Yeah. And you've worked with various different companies over the space of your career in the direct selling industry. So I'm really keen to chat with you a little bit today about where you see the future of direct selling going, but also to have a couple of those conversations that I think people maybe are a little bit afraid to have, or they feel like, they want to know the answers, but they're just wondering, what is the truth of what's going on, and what's going to happen moving forward. I think there's a lot of discomfort at the moment as well from distributors. You and I were just having a conversation before we went live about many of the companies that are shutting down, that are changing the way that they're doing things. And I think that's leaving a lot of people wondering, well, am I safe in this industry anymore? And what is it going to look like in a couple of years? So I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this. But just before we do, another really exciting thing that I noticed, and I personally want to know a little bit more about this, I noticed Neora has its very own podcast. Tell us a bit about the podcast. What's the passion, the mission behind it, and how, of course, can our listeners find it?
Yeah, thanks. I'll do a little pitch for our podcast here.
Yeah, let's go.
It's called Built to Win, and it's not really about Neora. It's really about leadership and learning skills and really like stepping into a leadership role, whether you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, a direct seller, or just somebody that wants to take your potential, your inner potential to that next level. So we share some stories. We share mostly from our own experience. So it's our founder, Jeff Olson, our co-founder, his daughter, Amber Olson Rourke, our co-CEO, Deb Heiss, and myself. So it's usually, sometimes you get all four of us, sometimes you get a couple of us, and we just talk about different things that we think are relevant and useful for our listener. And sometimes Neora comes up, but it's really, like I said, it's really not about Neora. It's just for people that want to be better, that want to do better, be better, like skill better, and just be a better version of themselves. That's really what it's all about. You can find it on all the regular podcast platforms, and it would be awesome if you went and checked it out and leave us a like.
Yeah, absolutely. What we'll do is we'll put the link to the podcast as well in our show notes with this episode so people can check it out. I did have a little bit of a look myself, and it certainly, obviously it's by the founders of the Neora, but it's more about, I can tell, impacting the industry, and I love that. So super excited for that, and thank you as well, and a huge thank you to Jeff and Amber and Deb and the team for getting behind the industry and putting some more value out there for everyone.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that I really wanted to dive into today, and we're just going to dive straight in that hole, Dave, I want to know what you think is currently the greatest threat to the direct selling industry and where you see the industry going right now. It's a big question, I know, but I think I really, it's in the back of a lot of people's minds at the moment.
It is, and it should be. In all fairness, it should be a question that people are asking right now. And this is something that I am very passionate about. Something that people probably don't know about me is I did spend about 5 years in Silicon Valley in a tech startup, venture capital backed startup, which very, very different from your traditional direct selling environment. But it gave me a lot of perspective on how business can be disrupted and how business needs to adapt. Like there are these transition periods throughout the history, and you can look at direct selling and see these transitions within the direct selling history too. But every business goes through these periods of disruption, and I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind that direct selling is going through one of these transitional periods. And I think that and I could talk a lot about this as to the reasons why and what the future looks like. But I think a couple of things that really stand out to me is that there are kind of two differing schools of thought in this. And one is we need to adapt, we need to evolve, we need to look at the future and recognize that the future is going to be different than the past. And that's great. And for me personally, that's the most encouraging and also the most important decision that companies can be making right now is looking towards the future. then there's the other school of thought, which is, hey, we're going to try to do what we've always done because we knew that worked, and it worked 10 years ago and it worked 20 years ago and it worked before that. So we're going to do that again. And I think as long as we're careful, and this is where I want to make sure that I'm really clear on this thought, because I firmly believe that the principles that govern the direct selling success model, like getting in front of people, building those relationships, like those things are always relevant and they will continue to be relevant. However, at the same time, there are massive innovations through technology and how we reach people and where we reach people, even down to the messaging that reaches people. Those are the areas and those are the tactics. And so I frequently talk about the principles of this business versus the tactics of this business. The tactics are different and they need to be different. And that covers everything in our business, from the products that we represent, the services that we offer, the training that we do, the recognition that we hold for our team, and what we the activities that we do recognize, the incentive trips that we do. Like all of these things are on the table and they need to be looked at, because we're in this transition period already, and the world is changing right around us. And if we're not on the front lines, part of that change and really directing what that change can be, we're going to be behind. And direct selling is not usually behind the times. Direct selling is usually ahead of the times. If you look historically, like e-commerce, big trend. E-commerce companies, among the first few pioneers, were actually direct selling companies. And so that's where I think the direct selling space really needs to be, is right on the front line, deciding what the future of direct selling needs to be. We've never had more competition for attention than we have right now. And I think that's our biggest risk, is not recognizing that we're fighting for attention on different frontiers that we've never had to fight for attention before. We used to be able to do our own thing off in our little corner of the world, which was great, limited. And now I think the world is much, much bigger. And I think the potential for direct selling is much, much greater than it ever has been. But we also have to compete on a whole new level compared to what we have done. And I think that's the biggest risk for companies right now, is not recognizing how competitive we have to be.
Yeah. Do you think, there's been a lot of talk about generations. I mean, we've recently had Heather Chastain come on and speak about some of those shifts between the generations and, what's attractive to them, what our industry looks like. And interestingly, and I know you've heard Heather speak as well, that one of the things she talks about, and they've done a lot of research in this space, of course, is that the younger demographic, or the younger generations, I should say, not demographic, younger generations it's not that they don't like our industry, it's that they don't like the way that we're packaging it. Do you think that there is a future for the model that we have, that business building model where we've got teams and we're growing a business, versus this influencer style, I'm just selling a product? There's two different, and I guess what I'm asking here is, and we're seeing a lot of companies making this switch, going, well, building a team is no longer a thing. We're just going to go to this whole affiliate style model where people can just sell our product and they don't need to worry about team. Do you think that there's a middle ground? Do you think there's a future for building teams, building business? Where do you see this going?
Yeah, that is an excellent question. And I think it is a very relevant question. And for me personally, I really do believe that there is a pathway forward for team building alongside product sales. When you look at it, and when you look at the core of what makes direct selling successful, it's not just about selling a product. That's a really big part of it. But what we also are is we are community builders. We are offering recognition for achievement. We are helping people become better versions of themselves through personal development. So for me, if you only look at direct selling and you look at it kind of one dimensionally and say direct selling is really about selling a product, well, there are a lot of ways to get that done. But if you look at it that way, it does become very one dimensional, and you miss all of these other great things about direct selling. And that's not to say that there aren't problems within this industry. We've all seen companies that have come in and not done it the right way, and that hurts everybody. That puts us kind of a little bit of takes a little bit of the shine off of the industry for all of us that are in this direct selling space. But there is a way to do this right. And I think there will always be a way to do this right. And when you are truly focused on the individual who's growing a business and recognizing that it's not just about selling a product. And if you take that more holistic approach about it, I really do personally believe that team building, personal development, all of these things still very much have a place in this space and will continue for forever as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I think it scares me a little bit. I don't know how you feel about this, but seeing this black and white mentality of it's all or nothing. I think there's a big hybrid situation going on right now where I think we need to be offering a combination of options that suit various different lifestyles, but also various different generations. And I've got a feeling these younger generations are actually going to come on board with the idea of building team, but we need to phrase it differently, word it differently, offer it differently, package it differently, because they want a business opportunity. And, again, one of the things that Bridgehead Collective has identified is it's not that they don't want to earn money, it's that they don't like the way we talk about it. Which I think is really interesting because it's we've got something they want, they love. It's how we're going to tell the world about it. And that's, I think, I'm guessing that this is something that you guys have already identified needs to change. And I'm assuming your podcast is also possibly helping with the language around that too.
Yeah. And I've got Heather's doing great work out there talking about how to speak to the different generations, because I think that is really, really important. And I think at some level, I think we always knew that, but to see that data and to see that presented to us with facts and with actual quantifiable data, it's so much easier to make decisions and to say, okay, we need to do this and not that. And even within the same company, we use a lot of different platforms, from TikTok to Instagram to Facebook, and our messaging does vary from platform to platform. And knowing what works on one platform, like what works on TikTok doesn't work on Instagram. It doesn't work on YouTube. And nobody's on Facebook. So, we've got to, but we still use Facebook every single day because that's where people are. And, but yes, I think that, yes, absolutely. Focusing on what people want has always been core to what we have to offer here in direct selling. I mean, when you think about it, direct selling was the original work from anywhere. I mean, that was the format that we had. When cell phones came out, direct selling took off because you could work from the beach, you can work from the pool, you can work from home, kids soccer games, practice, whatever. And well, now you can do a lot of different things, work from wherever. And so just that one thing alone has changed the landscape dramatically in terms of what we have to offer and what compared to what other people have to offer. The other thing that I'll say is that, when it comes to money, because you were talking about money and how to package that and how to present that, because, one thing that's become really interesting as we've really dived into the data and we've worked with Heather and we've worked with some of the research that they're putting together. And it's fantastic. But when it comes to talking about money, there is a very significant generational difference between how people want to talk about money and what people think is realistic. People like it's interesting. One of the things that I took away from Heather's research, so we should give Heather a big shout out here because we're talking all about her stuff. But one of the things, the Gen X, like, they don't want to hear about an opportunity unless it's worth $1,000 a month to them. Like, it's not worth it to them to even engage if they don't have the potential.
I did find this really fascinating too. I know where you're going here.
Yeah. And whereas younger generations, like, that dollar amount is much, much lower for them to have an interest in it. And they're much less concerned about earning on the referral of something, because the referral economy has absolutely taken off in the younger millennials, and especially in Gen Z. So for them to earn something as a result of their recommendation, like that's not weird. But what is weird is when we come in and we start using old MLM language and trying to explain to them like what we're doing, and they're like, "Ew, gross. That's not what I'm looking for." And we, you can't blame them either. It's like we're not that anymore. We shouldn't be that anymore.
Yeah. I did think it was very fascinating too that those younger generations are actually deterred by the higher income promise, because they've got this mentality of it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Like if it's too good to be true, it's not true.
Right.
So for them, a smaller amount as a potential earning opportunity, if it sounds doable, they're more likely to step in and give it a go. So I think I can't remember. I think Heather was saying $200 a month. It might have been $200 to $500 a month was their sweet spot, where they go, okay, I can see how that's realistic. But you promise $1,000 a month as a possible income earning opportunity. Obviously, we should never be promising dollar amounts, but you know where I'm going. They look at that and go, nah, that's too good to be true. I'm not in. Something's off here, and they step out. Which I thought was really fascinating because, like you said, the older generations, I don't like using the word older. I feel like I did this during Heather's episode as well. We had to come up with a new name. But the wiser generations were does that sound better? Do you like that?
I like that,
yeah. We're like, I want to know I can earn a decent amount of money here. It's not worth my time. So it's a very different mentality.
It is very different. And I think that's both wonderful and important that we recognize that, because when, and here's one of the things that really bothers me in the space is we still see companies that are trying to teach people how to be great direct sellers versus showing people how direct selling fits into what they're already doing. Yeah. And it's such an easy mental shift, but it's hard to get your entire organization to adopt that kind of a thought. But when you do, it's like it's so much easier to see momentum and growth by not like, hey, look, you already do all these things. Let's add this to you, and here's what's in it for you. And that's always the golden question, of course. Like, what's in it for me? Like if I'm a younger millennial, tell me how to make $1,000. I don't believe you. But for Gen X, it's like, I don't want your $250 a month. It's too much work. I don't need that. So it's such an interesting combination of all these different things that are happening right now, but it's certainly navigable, in my opinion. I think you can, if you're consciously attentive to the differences in the generations and the messaging, and making it fit into what is normal and natural for people, then absolutely the future of direct selling looks really, really bright under that lens.
Yeah. I think, this is a really great conversation to have, because I think there's been a lot of it's very much that black and white. We're hearing a lot of very negative conversation right now about the industry, even within the industry. I don't know about you, but certainly even attending industry events, it feels like a very depressing conversation that's being had about, how hard it is right now and the decline that a lot of people are experiencing, and the industry is shifting and not in a way that we know how to deal with. And I see so much opportunity here. I know you do too, but my focus, of course, is social media and how the industry utilizes that tool to grow. Mm-hmm. And while we're seeing so many shifts where generations are responding differently, we're also seeing some incredible opportunities coming up. And we've got this opportunity now that we didn't have 15 years ago, which is you can literally reach anyone, anywhere around the globe to share this message. But the question is, how are we sharing that messaging so that people are looking at it and seeing this industry for what it is, which is a life-changing opportunity. Because the flip side to that is, social media also shines a great big magnifying glass on the negative behavior as well. And I think that's what's doing a lot of the damage. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think
it's like you can disagree with me. That's okay too.
No, I do. I do agree very much. I do agree that social media carries a lot of of weight in terms of what people believe and what people are looking at. And yeah, that's very much something that we have to recognize. If you're taking social media for granted, which I know your clients don't, but I think a lot of companies do, is they just
Yeah.
assume that if they're on social media, that's enough, that's good enough. And it's not.
Yeah.
Maybe it was several years ago, maybe it was during the pandemic, for example, but it's not anymore. You have to be very intentional about your message. You have to be very intentional about how to present yourself and the message you're sharing. But above all else, it's like this is the new reality. So I think even the companies that are kind of reluctant to do social media and get involved in social media, there probably isn't too much time left before they're not going to be relevant.
Yeah.
That's harsh, but I think that's the reality of where we are.
Yeah. It's interesting because looking at a lot of the companies right now that are switching either to purely affiliate model or moving away from the industry altogether, many of them have been those companies that have had their head in the sand, I think, around social media. Let them do their thing. That's not our responsibility. We don't need to teach them, or we can't teach them. They won't listen. And leaving them literally in the wind to figure it out on their own creates a situation where one of two things happen. They either don't do anything at all, and like you said, they just show up on social media randomly and haphazardly, or they damage the brand significantly because they're out there saying whatever the heck they want to. And we know that there's also the compliance issue, which it isn't that people are deliberately doing the wrong thing. If they're not educated and they don't know how to talk about your product, they're going to do it the only way they know how, which is, this is my experience, this is what it's done for me. And that in many cases is very damaging to the industry because there's a lot we can't say.
There is, and I'm glad you brought up compliance, because I don't know if there's another company that's more qualified to talk about compliance than Neora is. But we obviously went through our own battle with the regulators and understanding, like, Neora from day one was built to do things the right way, and I think that we did, and that's why I'm here. So I'm very much pro compliance, and I'm very much pro, like, doing things the way they should be done. But I think there are a lot of companies that are very much worried about what compliance looks like, and are they in danger, and is their company next, which is a reasonable concern. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. And part of that, and it doesn't help. And let's just call it what it is. It doesn't help when the regulators themselves don't necessarily understand the business that they're regulating. And that's that's my personal opinion, but I think that's a major issue that we have. But I think a lot of companies, they are nervous about what are, am I next? Is my company next? Yeah. And I think here's the thing that we have to remember is that if your company is doing its best to educate their consultants or your brand partners or whatever term you're using for that, and you do have a product that is valuable and is worth what people are paying for it, and you're not making outrageous claims about what they can make or what they should be making. That being said, I think that the industry as a whole can be better in terms of what we're saying you can do, because if, like, a lot of companies need to structure their income disclosure statement. And again, like, this is just my opinion, so don't have your legal counsel call me. Like, I don't need that heat. But a lot of companies are scared to make any kind of claim.
Yeah.
And I understand that, because we've been there. We've been through that. But if you're making claims like, if you do this, you will earn that, then that's an income claim that you can stand up to. That's an income claim that you can realistically defend. And your compliance department should be there to take, like, they should be watching for what people are saying. They should be mindful of taking care of your brand on social media. Like, all of those things should be happening. But that shouldn't scare us away from doing the right thing, because the right thing, in my opinion, is showing people how they can build a business that's going to provide the kind of income that they want over a long period of time. So if we're not willing to make those statements, we're not willing to be bold about what this can do for people, because we've all seen what it can do for people, then, in my opinion, we're not doing what we should be doing as people, in this business, taking care of an opportunity for the people who have signed up for this. And it is life-changing. So, gosh, we don't need to talk all about compliance, but it's such an important part of the landscape right now. And
I'm a big fan of compliance. Can I just throw it out there? This is one of the things that it's such an uncool thing to talk about, and yet such a critically important part of our industry. And I think a very ignored part of our industry by many. But I want to just point something out here that occurred to me while you were chatting just then. And I think part of the reason compliance becomes such a big issue, and you were talking about the regulators not really understanding a lot about the industry. I know that we have seen, particularly in Australia, and I'm sure this is global, a lot of the compliance issues don't come from outside the industry. They come from inside the industry. Mm-hmm. Companies working against each other, which then tears the entire industry down. And, if I could, and I've got a question here for you, but I just want to almost answer the question from my perspective first, which is, if I could wave a magic wand here and change one thing about this industry, it would be to see companies working together more. Because I see this as one great big family, and we certainly see it when we go to industry events. People come together, and at the moment we see a lot of us versus them mentality out there with distributors. Our product compared to your product, our company compared to your company, our culture and philosophy compared to yours. And you know what, like, this industry changes lives across the board. I'd love to see more companies actually working together rather than tearing each other down, because if we do stick together, we're going to grow. Rising tide floats all ships, right?
Absolutely.
But I'd love to know, if I handed you a magic wand right now and you could solve one problem, or fix one thing or change one thing in the industry right now, what would you do with that magic wand?
So this may be controversial, but if I could change one thing, I would wave my magic wand and make everybody go through an audit like we went through in our FTC case.
Yeah. Okay.
And that sounds harsh, but I think it's really valuable for companies to understand what they should be doing. Because, and here's maybe a somewhat controversial take, because I don't necessarily agree with how the regulators go about it, but what they are doing and what is valuable for this space, for all of us in this space, is that they're trying to create an environment that is safe and that is living up to the standards that we all believe that it should. So in kind of a strange way, we're all very much looking at this through the same lens. And I think that's a good thing. Again, I don't necessarily agree with how it's being done, but the end result should be something that we are willing to put ourselves up against this standard and say, are we making claims that we can't back up? Are we making claims about our product that are not okay? Because the answers to all of those things should be no. We're not doing those things. We're not. We're good neighbors. We're good business people. Sometimes people feel like they can't grow a business unless they make those claims. I disagree. I think that we live in an age where you absolutely can make appropriate claims about your product, about your business, and we shouldn't be afraid of that. But we have to do it within the confines of the law, and that's a good thing. Um, but
Yeah.
yes, I think that if I could wave my magic wand and say what could I change about the industry is like make people live up to the standard that they claim to live up to.
Yeah.
If we do
Yeah.
that, no
Oof.
worries.
Yeah, I agree with you. At the same time, I understand the blood pressure rising maybe for a few people right now if they were to think about that, because what you guys went through was a really big deal, and it was very heavily publicized. And on that note too, with what you guys went through, but also with the changes that we're seeing in this industry right now, the uncertainty as well. It's not just amongst companies. Like, I know certainly in Australia with the change we're seeing with many companies, I'm sure over in the US you guys are seeing this happening as well, where companies are changing, closing left, right, and center at the moment. And there's this feeling of, like you said, will we be next? Is my company safe? What are you doing at Neora? What measures are you taking to instill a sense of faith and inspiring people to keep growing their businesses right now?
Great question. And for a lot of it, it's really about it's really about those things that we were talking about, is understanding the future of this business. In my mind, the future of this business is really exciting, and people, it should be exciting, especially if you're new and you're seeing what we can do in this business, even now in relatively uncertain times. The future of this business is so strong and so good that we shouldn't be worried about, are we, it's like we shouldn't be worried that we're saying the right thing to the right person all the time. The
Yeah.
right people are going to see what we have to offer, and they're going to come
Mhm.
along as long as we're doing it right. And I think that's the one thing that is changing more than anything else in this space, is that we're being forced to do the right thing more frequently, and that's a really good thing for the industry. That really is a good thing.
Yeah. And so in your experience, I mean, you're obviously working relatively closely with distributors across the board at Neora. What are you noticing, or what do you believe is the difference between distributors who experience growth in their business and distributors right now who just feel like they're stuck and they're not getting anywhere?
That's a that's like what's getting in the way of our brand partners.
Yes.
Um, I think the same thing. Honestly, I think it's that same uncertainty.
Yeah.
That they really like what they were doing 4 years ago when some of them hit their highest of high of revenue, and what they were doing at that time is not working anymore. And they're getting stuck in my opinion. Again, this is all the theory
This
according to
is your
Dave.
episode. You can throw your
Yeah.
opinion out all you want.
Which
That's what
obviously
we're here
I'm
for.
happy to do. I was like, but I think what's getting in people's way is that, like, they're focused on the tactics, and they're
Mm,
remembering when I for if their high was during the pandemic and they were
yeah.
online and they recruited their entire team online. They never did an in-person meeting. They never did they built it all through social media. Things have changed so dramatically just in the last 4 years since the first day of the pandemic.
Mm,
We're not competing. Like, yes, in 2020 and pretty much into the first half of 2021, if you were on social media and you had a product that was worthwhile, you were getting attention, and you were building a team, and you were selling more than you'd ever sold. Then influencer marketing really kind of leapfrogged what direct selling was doing. And now we're in this space where I think sometimes, and this really is where your training and your content shines, is that people think that if I'm on social media, that's a social media strategy. And we now have brand partners who are online and they're on social media and they're posting every day, and they are doing the things that are keeping them busy, but they're not doing the things that are growing their business. because
Yeah.
they're now competing against people who do this professionally for a living.
Yeah.
And that skill set's different. And so if you're only doing this through social media and you don't have a modern strategy, you're not going to compete in those spaces. And I think that sometimes gets in people's way because, they want it to work so badly because it did, 4 years ago. And they remember I was a star on social media and now I'm not. And
Yeah.
I haven't changed and my content hasn't changed. And why isn't this working? And so it leads to some, maybe a drop in confidence that, do I really know how to do this business? Can I really teach somebody else how to do this business? I think that 100% is getting in people's way right now is they don't necessarily have that confidence. But again, it comes back to them trying to make what used to work now from a
Yeah.
tactic standpoint, and it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is so true. I think people are, one of the things you just mentioned, and I think this is really important. I just want to highlight this is if what you were doing, if what you're doing now was working before and you haven't adapted or changed, and I'm going to say even in the last 6 months, I'm not even going to go, you went 2, 3, 4 years. I'm going to go 6 months. If you haven't adapted and changed in the last 6 months, particularly with your online strategy, then you're either going to be not experiencing growth or you're going to be going backwards because the way, it's not just the platforms that have changed, it's the way people use the platforms have changed. We often give the example of since short form video came in, people are not interacting in the same way that they did before, and yet our assumption is that social media is not working if people aren't interacting. And so we need to look at those numbers very differently now, and I think there's been a big shift in that space. So it's very interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah.
um,
Preach.
uh, Yeah, well, look, I mean, one of the very first things that we speak about now, whenever we present or do a training online, is that you've got to change your perspective. Because if you don't change your perspective and what it is that you're looking for and how you're measuring the results that you're looking for, you'll stop. But in actual fact, a lot of the time we're impacting people and we don't know we're doing it. And we keep seeing time and time and time again, people showing up online, getting what they think are no results. They're doing the right things, but days or even sometimes weeks later, someone will come up to them and tell them they've been watching everything they're doing. They want to know more about the business. It's really interesting, the shift that we're seeing right now and the way people are behaving. And the people who are succeeding right now, we're seeing, are the ones who are trusting that process and they're not looking for the instant. And I think that's the thing. People want the instant results, the instant gratification. It's that churn and burn mentality. I need a result today to know it's working, rather than playing that long game, building those long relationships. And, you mentioned before the value and importance of building a business where we're changing lives. And we do that every day by showing up and sharing what we're passionate about in a compliant way.
Yeah.
But I want to just talk about legacy for a moment, just as we finish up, because I feel like I could talk to you about this forever. I love this conversation. I think it's a really important one. But I really want to hear, I mean, this industry changes not just lives, financially, but also personally. And you've touched on that a few times. This is as much about personal growth, this business, as it is about financial growth. But I'm curious to know, what kind of legacy is Neora hoping to leave, both the company but also to the distributors?
Oh man, you talk about a question we could go on for a while. But
Yeah, let's
I
go
think
another hour here. You,
yeah, I think truthfully, Neora above all else, Neora wants to be remembered as the company that did this the right way. And our motto, our slogan is to make people better.
I
So at
love
the end of
that.
the day, that's what we want to accomplish. Whether that's financially, whether you join the business, whether you're just using product that you love, no matter what that is, that's what we want for people. We want them to remember us for doing things the right way.
Yep.
And I think that's certainly something that is reasonable. I think that's definitely something that can be done. But you have to be
Yeah.
focused. You have to be intentional. You can't. It's not just going to fall in your lap.
It's not going to accidentally happen, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And Dave, what's next for Neora? How do you see the company evolving in the years to come?
Oh, lots of different ways, lots of great ways. We've got international expansion that we're working on. We
Awesome.
have product innovation that we're working on. We have, just so many great things that are just around the corner for us. So yeah, all good things, but I think above all else, it's leading the charge into this next chapter of what direct selling is.
Yeah.
That's ultimately, I think, what's in it for us, what's on our horizon is we're very, very much interested in.
Well, I'm so excited to watch where you guys go and what you do next, and of course to experience some incredible growth. Look, I've got 4 fun questions now. They are my favorite questions of the interview, I've got to admit. So I'm very curious. I haven't chatted with you about these already, so I don't know the answers. So are you ready for them?
I'm ready. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. First one, what is your favorite book currently for our accelerator book list?
So I've got a couple, and it's really hard to pick one. As you know, I don't know. I love to read. I read a lot. One that was really impactful for me. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. It's not a really new book. It's been around for a little bit, but it is absolutely phenomenal in helping you understand how your brain works, and is your gut instinct correct, or is your brain lying to you, basically? And so I will warn you, it's not an easy read. It is not it is not popcorn, but it's really worthwhile. It's absolutely a must have. In my book, it's a must read.
All right. I'm adding that one to my list. I have not read this one. You said you had 2. I'm going to give you a second one here.
Oh, so the other one we just read as a leadership team, and it's called 10x is easier than 2x.
Oh yes, we've just read that one too. Brilliant book.
that one's really, really eye opening, and in the best way. It's just some of the takeaways about focusing on the 20% of your business versus the 80% of the busyness of your business. And that one is that's not a really tough read. That one's a really good read.
Yeah,
that'll go by quick, but yeah,
I love it.
Can't go wrong with either of those. Yeah.
Yep. All right, both added to the book list. So second question is, if you could have a superpower, any superpower, what would it be and why?
Man, it'd be tough. It's tough to beat flying. It'd just be like so many. And for me, I love the outdoors, and so for me, it would be yeah. Let's.
So it would be physically flying, being able to fly.
Physically flying, yeah.
Okay, so not like I don't want to fly. I want to get to a location like this. It's that I want to be able to fly through the air and see things.
I want to literally sail off a cliff and defy gravity. Yeah, I think that
you just as you say that, I'm remembering. Here's nostalgia here, which by the way is one of the top performing pieces of social media right now. If you want to post a really great piece of content that's favored, nostalgia is one of the ways to go. You make me think of a movie I watched when I was a tiny kid. I think it was called The Boy Who Could Fly, and I feel like it was do you know the one I'm talking about?
Yeah. That was a great movie.
I feel like that was like the movie of the times when I was really, really small. And so you make me think of that. Anyway.
Yeah. No, that's a fantastic movie. Yeah.
Blast from the past, that one.
Blast from the past for sure. Yeah. I haven't heard that for a bit. But
no, right. It just popped into my head. I couldn't even honestly remember all the details about the movie. So maybe I need to revisit it with my kids. Favorite quote, Dave?
Probably from, I'm a big fan of history. So I spent a lot of the books I read are, if they're not personal development, they're about history of all kinds. One of my favorite quotes is from Winston Churchill, who, of course, the famous Prime Minister of Britain during World War II and just the horrific early war that was happening. And he said that to improve is to change. So to be perfect is to change a lot. And I thought that's a great mantra to live by, especially in our business.
Yeah, I love that.
You have to be willing to do things differently.
Yep, absolutely. Last question, but by far my favorite is if you could go back in time and say one thing to your past self, what would that be?
Invest in Apple. No, just kidding.
I Zoom shares. Yeah,
I would, but that wouldn't be the number one thing because that's just money. But what I would tell myself, in all seriousness, I would tell myself that not everything matters as much as you think it does. So be brave, like embrace change and take risks. Do things that are going to push the envelope. Things that are going to take that risk. Invest in that business. Start that company. Do those things that are going to push yourself to be the best possible version of yourself. And because stuff. You, like you said, we're the wiser generation, but I think I would give that advice to myself 100 times out of 100.
I love it. So good and perfect way to end this episode. Thank you so much again, Dave, for joining us. I think this has been a really important but I think exciting conversation. I'm excited about where this industry is going and where Neora is going. So thank you so much for joining us today.
No, thank you. And I agree. I think this industry is in it. Yes, it's in transition. That's a good thing. And I am here for it. And thank you for leading the charge on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks again to our beautiful listeners for tuning in this week. We really appreciate you too. And we look forward to seeing you on the podcast again next week. That's it from us. Bye for now. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.